This is the Whimsy Farm Podcast. I'm Carolyn Crane.
There's a big wide world right out your door. Good people doing good things. Whoa, it's a big wide world. Now is the time. Now is our time.
Welcome, everyone, to Season 2 of the podcast and Episode 18. Late last fall, in anticipation of being out of the studio for my shoulder replacement, I spoke at length with Laura Pritchett, author and educator, and, as we soon found out, kindred spirit. Enjoy our free-flowing conversation about honoring the wildness within us, personal authenticity, and journeying inward during these winter months. Welcome, Laura Pritchett, to the Whimsy Farm Podcast.
I am so delighted to be here. Thank you.
I've been wanting to have you on since the podcast was just an idea, so this is a big deal for me, and I'm sure that my listeners and viewers are going to just enjoy it so much. And I wanted to talk to you, and I want to say we're recording this in the fall because, as you all know, I'm going to be out of commission for a while with a shoulder replacement, but this will air in the winter, so we're pretending it's winter as we talk about the wild within us and how we can resonate with the wild and maybe find some peace and some ways to activate our authenticity and our true selves. So that's what we're going to chat about today.
I am so excited to do this, and I have watched your podcast grow. And I just want to say what an honor it is to be with someone who is talking about, as you say, good people doing good things.
That was inspired by Utah Phillips, and I'm actually writing his biography right now, which is a very long, wonderful process. And the entire line is too many people are doing too many good things to afford me the luxury of being pessimistic. And
Oh,
I've always loved that quote because it reminds me to keep doing whatever I need to do to find hope and strength to march forward, whether it's through a personal crisis or a planetary crisis or a political crisis. They come. And how do we keep from being jaded? How do we keep our hearts open? And for me, that part of that is that resonance with the wild.
well, I just love that. Thank you for all you're doing. And there are so many good people doing good things, and we can't give up hope for just that reason. I love that.
What does resonating with the wild mean to you?
I suppose there's many ways of interpreting that, but one obvious approach to that good question is the wild within, res- living a life that resonates with the wild within. And I have done much growing and changing in my life, and I'm proud of the hard work I put into it. But one thing I can say is, for whatever reason, I thought I was going to die young. Even as a child, I assumed I was going to die any day now. And I'm sure it had to do with things that came up in my childhood or maybe just an active imagination or something. But one thing that I am proud of, and I say that humbly as someone in process, but one thing I'm proud of is I have always lived as if I am about to die, which makes it very easy to prioritize one's dreams. And I knew from my earliest diary at age 7 when I wrote, I want to be a writer someday. And I couldn't even spell it. I spelled it Writer. But I knew I wanted to be a writer, and so it was a no-brainer. I didn't have to go on any other journey or listen to my parents when they wanted me to get a job that made money or any of the other obstacles that come up for people. I knew I wanted to write books. I knew it would be a hard road. I knew I would get rejections. I knew I wouldn't be rich. Uh, but books and nature were my loves, and books and natures are still my loves. And I've never really had to deviate from this mindset of do it while I can, because who knows what's going to happen. And I often wake up, I'm amazed to, I'm 54. I wake up and I'm amazed that I'm still alive for some odd reason. Shocking, shocking, I tell you. But I do think that that mindset has helped me in many ways. And then another way of living in resonance with the wild has to do with my deepening relationship with the natural world and some serious effort I'm putting into that in all kinds of ways. But really, mostly about stepping away from this old mindset that I was raised in, that humans are separate from nature and we're somehow better, different, set apart. And instead, letting that go. It's absurd. It seems, although it's easy to do, is just see myself as Laura, one entity, but to be in relationship with the rest of the world. And a lot of that has to do with language, which circles back to writing. For me, what we name something really matters. And I'm sure you've been thinking about this and your listeners have too, but this renewed call or new call to change the way we refer to things. It's easy to cut down a tree when it's an it, and it's harder to cut down a tree when it's a she or a sister. Robin Wall Kimmerer and many other writers are asking us to examine our language. And I love that evolution going on right now in the writing world.
Last summer, 2024, I found growing alongside a pillar on my back deck a bur oak. And it is, I think, the only oak on my property.
Hmm.
And there it was, struggling to grow up and find some sun around this wooden pillar. And the first thing I thought when I saw it was, now I have to take the deck down.
I love it.
And I still do think that. And now it's grown above the pillar, and it's grown about 4 feet since then. And I'm trying to think of the best way to cut that pillar and not accidentally cut the tree. But that really was my first thought of it. And my second thought was, well, I can't ever sell this house because someone might cut down the bur oak.
I love this story so much. Can I just say that I had a deck built 3 years ago, and I asked the construction workers to build this whole uh uh thing around a growing grapevine. There's just no way I could cut down the grapevine. I just couldn't do it. So it's like extra money and work and everything, but I had to build the deck in such a way that the grapevine was left intact.
I understand. And I think that that goes back to what you were talking about, that to me, from the second I saw her, she was not an it. She was a miracle,
Mm,
a volunteer bur oak growing out from under a deck. Uh, she had to be protected. And I think when we live that way, we see everything through a different lens. And it's a lens that is not a colonist lens. In the
mm,
colonist view, trees are meant to be chopped down. Trees are timber, right?
exactly.
They're not a symbiotic necessity to our survival, which in fact they are.
Exactly. And if I just may add, I've been reading Is a River Alive by Robert McFarlane, and it has to do with the personhood of a waterways, and that we could grant them rights and think of them as our sisters, really. We're dependent on water. We're not going to make it long without healthy water. And yet so many of our rivers are dying, and it's because of the way we speak about them and treat them. Which is only to say there's a lot of books coming out, and a lot of energy being poured into, I think, trying to make this enormous paradigm shift, and it will take a while. But I'm so glad that some of us are starting to reconsider that mindset and consider something new.
So you mentioned your relationship with death, and I was noticing and you're also by Laura Pritchett from your Three Keys book here, which we'll talk about later. You have a work of nonfiction called Making Friends with Death, a field guide to your impending last breath. Well, that's an intriguing title. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Sure. Thank you for asking. Mostly, I write fiction. I have 7 novels out, but I had to stop at one point in time in my 30s and early 40s because I did think that I had some diagnosis that might kill me. It ended up being something called trigeminal neuralgia, and it's a milder case than many people have. But I was in such physical pain that I really thought, oh boy, I got to get ready. And I had young kids at the time, and that scared me more, leaving them without a mother that wasn't me, I thought I was doing a good job parenting. Um, and so I was trying to wrap my head around my mortality, at least in like this practical kind of way, like, and I don't mean legal documents and medical documents, although those are important. I mean more like ethical documents or legacy documents, um, letting the world know who you were, what you stood for, what mattered. And I had been doing that, arguably, you could say, my whole life because I'd been writing books that mattered to me, novels. But before I went, I found that I had more to do and say. And so I started looking around for good guidebooks, and I felt like the Buddhists had it down. Uh, they have a lot of good advice, uh, generally speaking, but I didn't find a book that wasn't leaning into any spiritual path, including Buddhism or any other one, that really helped me or spoke to me. I would say that nature is my religion, and I just wanted kind of a agnostic type book that didn't discuss what happens next, but just like how to get ready in this world. And so I just started talking to people, hospice workers, doctors, dying people, um, all kinds of death doulas, anyone associated with death, and just asking them for wisdoms. And I put it together in a book for me. And then I went ahead and published it with a small press just in case it helps anybody else.
What did you learn from it? How did it help you on your journey at that time?
Well, I was very scared. And I think a lot of anxiety in the world comes from a fear of death. We might name it as something else or think of it as something else, but ultimately, I think it scares us to think of us no longer existing. And um, through practice, and I mean like years of meditation and signing up for courses about making friends with death, more or less. That's not what they were called, but that's what they were about at the local Buddhist temple near me. And reading, I can say with some certainty that I've let go of most of that fear. I mean, I'm not. This is not a Hallmark card. I don't want to die. I really like this planet, and I'm very curious about what happens with it and with my kids and with the magpie outside. There's a lot to love about being alive. I don't want to die. But if I do, I think of it now more as a natural process. We have there's a phrase in Greek, debitum nature, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, but I do know that like our debt to nature is to die. If we're born, we must die. And it's a beautiful process, really. It must happen and it's natural. And so really feeling that in my bones, like not just intellectually, but feeling it in my bones deep down, it makes me much less fearful of death, which again helps me live my life of like, what do I want to do? I want to write books. I want to teach. I want to get people speaking up for planet Earth. My whole life revolves around what I want to do instead of like avoiding death or avoiding aging or that sort of thing.
No, thank you. That's interesting. I think my relationship with death really changed for the better when I helped my mother and then my husband die, and caring for them during that process, being there with them when they died. Um, I don't know, it changed everything for me, and I guess maybe you would think that would make someone more afraid, seeing it, but for some reason it did not. For some reason it made sense, and it was time for them to go, and I was mostly grateful for all that they'd given me, and I wanted to move forward with my life in a way that honored them.
Ah, I love that so much. I think we need to hear more stories of that, of just what you said about how helping someone softens, maybe that's the right word. I don't know, softens one's perspective of it, but also just being grateful for the time you had with them. That's
Let's
beautiful.
talk a little more about the wild within and what that looks like for us to have wild within. I was thinking about that in reverse, thinking about talking to you today, thinking about what happened to people and what happened to me when I was much younger, when I didn't have that connection to the wild within. I think that the antonym to that is recklessness, that we can be reckless in many ways when we don't have that touchstone inside of us of the wild within. I was wondering what you thought of that and what that wild within means to you.
Oh, that's such a good question. Can I turn it back on you briefly? Is that allowed? I'm just curious
That's allowed.
the recklessness that you experienced maybe at a time when you didn't have the touchstone.
What more about that?
Hmm.
Um, I think I loved very selfishly. I think I tended to walk with agendas. I think I was fear-based. I think I was sometimes unkind. How'd I do?
Wow. It gives me a shiver, really. I think what a beautiful summary. It really resonates with me. Uh, and it resonates with how I observe parts of our culture operating as well, kind of selfishly with an agenda, money being a big part of that agenda, accumulation of wealth of some kind, fear based, the things we do to one
I
another
think
out of fear.
and I think I was unconsciously searching for my authentic self. I was not my authentic self because I hadn't found the courage to do that, and so all of that other stuff was a part of the pretense.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about that lately in terms of getting older and the invisibility, quote, invisibility of middle age. And as you know, that's what my book, Three Keys, is about. And we can talk about that later. But one thing that's on my mind lately is how much more authentic my relationships feel. And I mean, with girlfriends, with my partner, with my kids. Um, there's something about a certain amount of like wisdom, I guess I want to say, or peacefulness, solidness that I feel now that I have never felt before. And it makes me more generous, but it also makes me like not suffer fools. If there's somebody out there who's just wants to cause trouble in the world for no good reason, I just don't need the, them to be part of my life anymore. I have kind of stronger boundaries, but I wouldn't call them unkind boundaries. And look, like at the end of it, like every day, I think to myself, I love being outside so much. So much of my life is, would I rather go hang out with this person or would I rather be writing or hiking? And it's, like I'm just more clear on like that's a person I would like to spend time with right now. Because it's a genuine friendship, genuine relationship versus no, I'm not gonna have tea with that person, uh, a different kind of person because I could be hiking, I could be writing. So it's like a prioritization of the wildness of my soul, really, like, and I don't think it's selfish. It's just kind of like being frank with oneself about what's working for you. We get to a certain age, right? And that just seems easier.
Yes, and we're searching not so much for our truth in someone else, but inside of ourselves and in nature,
Mhm.
which has a vibration that can teach us things that we can't learn anywhere else.
Mhm.
I mean, that's science, right?
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if that just comes with the territory of, you know, quote, becoming invisible as a middle-aged woman. Um, I feel less invisible to me, you know, like the, maybe at a party
Yeah.
people talk over me or something, that's fine. But for me, I'm like definitely feeling like I know who I am, what I stand for. And oddly enough, that circles back to the death book because I feel like writing those documents and thinking through who you are and what you stand for does help you. Once you articulate it, you can bond to it.
I remember a long time ago when I was that other person, much younger, I was driving with someone and we were through Northern California valley where the fields are very brown in the winter. And he said something about how it was beautiful. And I said, "Why would you think that was beautiful? The grass is dead." And he looked at me and said, "It's dormant, it's not dead."
Mm,
And I was duly humbled. I had never thought of that before. And I think that that's one of the things that the wild within and being in touch with nature can teach us repeatedly is that there are different stages of life, different qualities of life. They appear differently even when we might appear invisible or others might appear invisible because they're not blooming and shining in that moment or they're not what society tells you you should be looking for. There's still a lot of depth there and a lot of life to be reclaimed.
that's so nice. That has me thinking of winter, which is coming. I took a walk today and had to wear a coat, and it's about to snow for the first time. And for me, the it's not only the rhythms of our lives, but the rhythms of the year. And I definitely feel my energy changing as we head into winter. And it is a dormant kind of time, restful time. I get a lot of writing done in the winter that I simply can't do in the summer because I'm planting trees and gardening, as are you, I bet.
Same, same, yes. The world is faster. And then
Yes.
I was having lunch with, I had this wonderful intern, he might be listening, Sawyer, and we were talking the last time he was over and how we couldn't wait for winter and how everyone, especially in Michigan, it's pretty bleak. Like they don't want winter to come. And like, but winter, there's nothing to do. So you can read and nap and write and
Hmm.
do all of these interior things that when you're so connected with nature, you you kind of take the siren's call when at different times of year.
Hmm.
Oh, what you just said reminded me of something, what you were saying about winter, which I thought was so lovely. Y- Uh, New Year's resolution. Now, I have a friend, poet Molly Fisk, and I don't know if this was her idea or she got it from somewhere else, but I've done it for years, where she came out anti-New Year's resolution. And her reason being that it's winter. Winter's just started. It's a time to go in. It's a time of dormancy. It's a time of reflection. It's not a time to come out, you know, gung ho with all of these intentions that you thought of in between Christmas and then. So, what she does and what others I know have started doing, including me, is she suggests that you spend the winter coming up with one word that will be your word of the year. And I started doing that. And the word may come in January, it may come in March. I may think, oh, this word is not coming. But the word always comes and it's always the right word. And I think honoring that stillness and the darkness is better for us than attaching on to an agenda we just thought of and then feeling like crap when 3 weeks later we didn't follow through with it.
I am 100% in favor of this, and I had heard of it a few years ago. And guess what my word was last year?
What?
Whimsy.
No,
Yes, whimsy. Isn't that great?
that's amazing. That was my word in 2019, I think, when I started first imagining conjuring all of this. Wow, whimsy. Sister,
Uh,
hello. Yeah.
so when
Wow.
I heard the name of your farm, I was like, yep. I even painted a little poster that said whimsy this way. And it was like a little arrow leading into my home. And I needed to do that in reaction to some things that were going on politically, right? It was like, what is the opposite of what can I find this year that isn't going to be immediately obvious? And it's a really good mantra. Do you remember what your word was for this year?
Oh, yes. And I'm just now starting to get it. It's transcend.
Mm, that's good. Yeah.
And I think for me, it means transcend others' expectations of me and how they might affect me.
Hmm.
And my Qigong practice really helps me with that, to just stay in centered in myself, trust the timing, don't allow myself to be rushed, um, and to transcend that uh, relationship I've had with the expectations others have of me. I think that's
Hmm.
what the word was about. It was a slippery year. When
Hmm.
that was whimsy was your word last year, you said, right? So
Yes.
what's your word this year?
Oh, I haven't come up with it yet. I do think it will have something to do with that very same thing, though. And it circles back to what I was just saying and what the three keys is about is when we start to lose the identifying, words or roles that we've bonded ourselves to, like mother or wife or worker, and we start to retire and our kids grow up or our partners, in the case of three keys, her partner dies, her husband dies. So she's no longer associated with those roles. So she has to reinvent herself. That's really the question, I think, that so many women and men probably of a certain age of like, what have I been doing that meets the expectations of other people versus what have I been doing for the authentic self? And I don't mean being selfish because I really believe the reason I go to sleep satisfied every night is because I feel like I live a life of service, more or less. So I don't mean like me, 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 it's all about me. I just mean I don't want to live for other people's expectations of who I am anymore.
I know what you mean about service, and it's not like servitude. It's
Yeah.
something for the greater something, and not about me particularly. But I feel like I'm a conduit
Hmm.
rather than the star of the show. I'm the bridge between ideas and people that I can help them connect to those ideas. But
You're a
let's
good
talk about three
person.
keys. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say you're a good person doing good things. That's what you are.
As are you. As are
I
you.
think we are. I think that's fair to
Like we
say.
are.
Yeah.
I do too. Um, so yeah, let's talk about three keys. And it has been a while since I read it. I actually, listeners wrote a review of this, which is on my website at whimsyfarm.net. When it first came out, I wrote a review and actually gifted a few people with copies because I liked it so much. And that probably has something to do with the fact that, like Amelie, I lost a husband. Like Amelie, I went through identity, things like that, and definitely have felt that invisibility that you do such a good job showing. And part of me likes being stealth in that way and being able to go about the world without as many eyes on me as I'm about 10 years older than you are. But she's such a lovable character and she's so authentically herself that she inspires, I think, women of a certain age to be more themselves.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to write. So The Three Keys is my most recent novel, just came out last year. It's my seventh novel, and my most, I'd like to say it's like the most fun. I really had fun with this book. Um, and the premise of it is that Amelie, the main character, is traveling across the American West from Chicago down to Arizona and breaking into people's homes with three keys that she has. But she's a very polite criminal and she's doing it for a particular reason. And she leaves the homes better than she found them. But they're all off grid homes where she can be invisible as she contemplates her invisibility of middle age and rediscovers who she is, like needs to unlock the door of who she really is. So I find her delightful too. I mean, she's nutty and does some nutty things, but she's on a journey, literal and of course self-discovery and having some fun along the way. So I like her.
She's nutty, but she's very sane.
Yeah, she might be more sane than many of us.
And she has fascinating experiences in nature. I
Yes.
remember one part where she is, and I love the politics of this too, where she is putting survival kits for border crossers deep in the forest so that when they are crossing without the benefit of government paperwork, they can find some water and some food uh, and survive.
Yeah, and that scene in the novel, like many, are based on my lived experience. My novels are fiction and they're made up stories, but I often have lived some of the experiences. And um, I have done what they call a water drop in Arizona area, which I did it in an area where it's legal, BLM lands. It's something that is controversial, but because you could say it was littering or aiding and abetting. But my idea and what I wanted, I was just there as a reporter, really, because I also do freelance writing for magazines and newspapers. I wanted to see what a water drop was like. And water is heavy. As we all know, anyone who has ever camped and really needed to lug your own water, water is very heavy. And out in that desert, people die of thirst. In this one stretch of area, there's more people who die crossing the border than any other location. And these are women and children and men who are young and seeking a better life and simply needed some water. So, uh, in my book, the main character has this guilt complex because she brought her dying husband a glass of water. He was having a stroke, but she didn't know that, and he just looked weak, and so she spent all this time getting him a glass of water. And so for her, it kind of comes full circle later that she feels like she can leave water for someone and it will help. And that will help her heal the guilt and grief she feels about like not being immediately useful to her husband at his moment in need. Uh, but it's fascinating. So I did do this and it was exhausting work. And there's wonderful organizations who uh, do the very same thing and try to keep people alive. It's important. And it's important that we talk about this.
I think so too. And I think there's more of a reluctance to talk about things like that in the present climate,
Hmm.
which is a shame. And I think I was down near the border. My parents lived down in Cochise County, down near the
Mm.
border, so I spent a lot of time there. And I have a friend who was I don't know if she still is, but she was a goat farmer, and you could see the border from her house, and she was telling me how the climate had changed so much that it used to be women and children, and she used to help them, but now it was cartels members with guns, and she was afraid. And I think there is that reality. There is a reason why there has been this backlash, but that doesn't mean there aren't women and children and people who don't want to hurt anyone trying to find a better life. And
Right. Yeah. And we can look
that
at
is
larger. Oh, go ahead.
I think that we're all hardwired to find a better life and
Yeah.
to find our authentic life and to be the best people we can be. It's in our DNA. So of course people are going to try to go somewhere to find a better life. Now you go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, and I just 100% agree. And also I agree that we need to prevent dangerous people from crossing the border. And I understand your friend's concern about the cartels. And that just requires steady leadership, looking at policies and what can be done while preventing unnecessary deaths. So, yeah, it's a complicated issue to be sure. I'm just agreeing with you. It's um,
It
uh,
is, but none of it is the fault of the women and children crossing the
right.
border looking for water. That's, I
Yeah,
think, the important
right.
thing too.
Yeah.
And um, the fear-based climate, it's easy to fall into that propaganda and be afraid of anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
And
just
back
think,
to nature, I think that's another thing nature teaches us is not to be afraid, to think that you can be out in the wild or in your inner wild and be safe.
and that is one of the reasons I wanted to write about Amelie driving around and feeling slightly unsafe, sleeping in the back of her car. Uh, I have a daughter who is much more aware of the dangers out there in the world, and I can perhaps be naive, but we had engaged in fascinating conversations about like what it's like to be a woman traveling alone, maybe sleeping in the back of your car, and how safe is it? And I think there's this sad idea out there that it's very unsafe. And that we've got to watch out for all kinds of wild creatures and bad humans. When in fact, I think statistically speaking, and I think that would back me up here, it's we are safer than we think we are often. But the stories that we see, the TV, the shows of people being murdered, like there we have all this stuff coming at us telling us the world is dangerous. The world is dangerous. So we don't go out and experience it. And I'm not saying be reckless, back to recklessness, be aware. But being out in nature does make you aware, right? Like I just had a mountain lion in my neighborhood kill a neighbor's horse. And that's tragic, but it does remind me, like, yes, we live in the natural world where there's, I kind of actually appreciate that walking with kind of the back of my neck, the hairs are a little raised. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm paying attention. Like, the world is, it demands my engagement. And that's a beautiful way to take a walk too.
I think that came up for me a lot when I was rewilding my property because I took it from 2.5 acres of desolate lawn to a thriving state verified ecosystem.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
part of that ecosystem involves snakes, lots and lots of snakes. And I have a neighbor who's terrified of snakes. And she doesn't like to come over here. She does, she'll bring a big stick because she's so afraid of the snakes. And um, they're not poisonous. They're harmless snakes. And they do entertain my dogs for many hours, and my dogs can never catch them. But they have a right to a home, hundreds of snakes. And I gave them one, and I'm happy about it. And I don't understand the colonizer philosophy of destroy habitat for everyone but us, and then we'll be okay, when
Yeah.
it is actually totally the opposite, right? Look at where have the insects gone? Do you remember as a kid driving for a while with your parents maybe, and then you had to go out to get gas and your whole windshield was splattered with insects and you had to scrub them off? And that doesn't happen anymore because that habitat is gone. And our society's divorce from nature is literally threatening to kill us. And yet it's hard for a lot of people to see because, again, they're fear based. They're like, the snake will hurt me, even though I know it can't.
This makes me think of something that's been on my mind a lot lately, which is the shifting baseline syndrome, as I've heard it's called. But the shifting baseline of what we assume is normal in nature. For example, our windshields used to be covered with bugs, and now they're not. But my kids and younger folks don't remember that time. So their new normal is, oh, there's just fewer bugs. And my another example of that is I have a vague memory of being able to drink from streams when I went camping as a child. And my parents certainly did. They drank from streams. And now my kids would never drink from a stream. That's their normal. They think the world's always been that way. And so we every generation we kind of lose what used to be normal, and then there's a new normal, and we forget what the planet was like before any of these normals, right? Like imagine the world 1,000 years ago. It was probably full of bugs and streams you could drink from,
And
and we
snakes.
and snakes, and that was okay. And it's a deep source of grief for me that every generation of not only humans but the deer outside my yard, like they assume that they have to stay away from cars. They don't remember a time without cars. Sad.
I remember you brought back a vivid memory for me. I remember hiking in the Sierra a lot and knowing where to drink from a stream.
Mhm.
You don't drink from where the water's calm, you drink from where the water's going over the rocks, and you can put your water
Exactly.
bottle in right
Exactly.
off the rocks. And it also reminded me of another quote of Utah Phillips. He said, "The long memory is the most radical idea in America." And he was talking
Mm,
about that shifting baseline, that when we don't have intergenerational sharing of information like that, when our collective societal memory is short, then nobody knows that you could once drink out of the stream and where to get the water.
exactly.
That's when bad things repeat themselves because nobody remembers, right? Nobody remembers the first Gilded Age, so now there's a second Gilded Age, for
Yeah.
instance.
And that's why hope that we keep telling stories of how it used to be or could be, or how things have changed, just to try to keep that in the conversation and in the consciousness, which, always brings me back to books, and why I love books is I didn't have grandparents I spoke to, but what I did have was books, and they were my teachers. They were my friends. They taught me about the way the world was, or, in the case of science fiction, how it could be, or uh, what had happened to planet Earth, or how we might protect planet Earth. It's always been the core interest of mine, books and planet.
I'm the same. And like you, I knew as a child that I was supposed to be a writer, was how I would have put it. And I had a brother who was a writer, and he died when I was 6 in a motorcycle
Mm,
accident, and we were very close. And it was a
sorry.
few years later, thanks. It was a few years later, I was in my room listening to my phonograph, and my mom came in with this manila folder, this fat manila folder, and sitting cross-legged on the floor, she just plops this folder in my lap and says, "This is the writing of your brother,"
Oh,
and walked
wow.
out. And I opened the folder and I opened a whole new world of his poetry and clippings. And he was a journalist for the high school paper.
Oh,
And I
wow.
knew in that moment, I knew that something had been passed on to me and that I was to carry that torch. Uh, and I never doubted it after that. But like you, books, I was constantly reading at that age and then constantly wandering in the woods of the Sierra foothill by myself. And again, the changing times, I could go out for hours by myself. I had all these forts tucked away. And my parents never worried. They'd
Mm,
never be back in time for dinner. It was 10 in the morning. I'd be back at like 4, out in the wilderness by myself, drinking from
mhm.
the rocks. And today that would just that would be an arrestable offense, you know?
Child neglect. Yeah.
But
Yep.
those two, then that's the inner and the outer, wildness, if you will, the imaginable possibilities in books and in nature.
Yep. And can I mention just one thing I'm really, really proud of? And again, I don't say it out of ego. I just say it out of like a clarity that I am proud of this is that I've been able to develop and direct one of only two or three nature writing MFA programs in the country. Per my belief that one thing we can do is have a, a Master of Fine Arts degree that helps people write, but specifically about nature writing. And it hasn't been easy. It's been a lot of work developing this program, but it's thriving. The cohorts are amazing. The students are publishing and teaching and doing all the good things. And I do feel there is that, it's a cliche to say, but that like ripple effect of get some people speaking up specifically for the planet, and then it will keep rippling out and more people. And hopefully the sound of the choir rises and the volume of the singing rises, and eventually it becomes a more permanent and large part of the cultural conversation. So I just wanted to
I'm
throw that out.
so
I was able to combine my book love of books and writing into a graduate degree program.
and I'm so glad you brought that up, and, uh, I want to talk about that a little more. I follow you on social media, so I see your posts about this program, but can you tell us a little more about where it's located and how long you've been doing it, and just give us the deets?
Sure. Well, it's everywhere because it's an online program, but we meet by Zoom, so it's not anonymous. I mean, there is community. We don't have anyone from Michigan, but we have East Coast people and West Coast people. People meet in Gunnison, Colorado, which is the wildflower capital of the world. Right near there is Crested Butte, which is the capital, I guess, of wildflowers. We meet there once a year in July for a week, and do all sorts of classes and get to know one another. And then the rest of the graduate program is done online through weekly Zooms and asynchronously through um, posting about books we're reading or craft discussions or um, things that we're noticing in the world of nature writing today. I'm really interested in nature writing today, like not Emerson, not Thoreau, not Muir. Um, those are all interesting folks, and I could go on at length about them. But what I'm really interested in is what is happening now in the world. And I think it's sassy and edgy and diverse and meaningful, and adding, and whether it's fiction, nonfiction, or poetry, it's adding depth and breadth to our understanding of what is happening to the planet, bearing witness to it, grieving it, hoping for it, changing our relationship to it. And that circles back to how we started in this conversation is how can we teach people to be in a different relationship with the other creatures of this earth, in a real sense of relationships, mutualism, basically. So I love teaching. Um, the particular students who sign up for such a program are going to be cool people, right? They're going to be wanting to speak up for planet Earth in some way. So they're just fabulous humans, and our faculty are fabulous. And I'm just so proud of that particular, I don't want to call it legacy, but I hope it is someday. I'm not retired yet. I've been directing it for 7 years.
So you said something that intrigued me about craft. That so you talk about craft and nature writing. How does craft and nature writing, how does it bridge genres, and how is it different than
Yeah.
craft and other kinds of writing?
Yeah, that's a great question because a lot of writing is writing, right? So we have craft classes, say, for example, in character development or how to do great dialogue or how to have setting matter. And of course, that's very important to nature-based folks, whether they're writing a sci-fi book or a memoir about the family ranch, like, they setting obviously matters. Or we might take a look at point of view or tense. Um, we look at practical things like how to get published, how to find an agent. So those are all things that pertain to any writing. What I think we're trying to highlight in the program is writing that has a sense of urgency or advocacy or educational um, foundation to prioritize the planet and how special she is and how we can be better stewards.
I love that answer, and I love that word steward because I think that that gets to the crux of the paradigm shift
Mhm.
that we need to happen.
Yeah, what a great gift this this planet is. So, we forget about it. The magic somehow becomes mundane. That the temperature is just right, the oxygen levels are just right, the the tides are just right. Like there's so much that's working just right. Holy moly.
And there's so much exquisiteness.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, we're winding down to our hour, and I want to ask you if there's something that you want to say or talk about that we haven't touched on yet.
Well, actually I would. I brought a little poem to read if I could. It's just
Oh,
a
I meant
few.
to ask you to bring a poem or something to
Oh,
read.
that's so
So,
funny. I just read your
yes,
mind.
yes, you did.
So when I read yeah, a while ago, "Good people doing good things," your tagline or the identifier, I immediately thought of this poem by Margaret Newton. And I don't know her well, but I love this poem and I send it to everyone I know who is a good person doing good things. So can I read it?
Please.
Trust that you know some people who will surprise you with the way they care for the world and every small spider, the way they care for you as you open and shut and then open again. Polish the way they shine. Recognize yourselves in shared water.
I just got chills. What a beautiful poem. Thank you. And the author's
Yeah.
name again?
Margaret Newton, Noodin. I love that line. Trust that you know some people who will surprise you with the way they care for the world. And I just want to thank you for the way you care for the world.
And right back at you. Thank you so much for all the work you've done. The teaching, the writing, the being in harmony with nature. And it's such an honor and pleasure to consider you a friend.
Thank you. Right back at you. Thanks.
Well, when you, I do want to ask you one more thing. Novel number 8. Is there a novel number 8 in the
Actually,
works?
there should be, and there will be. I guess there is one that's about three-fourths done, but what I'm working on right now is a craft book about writing. And I'm also loosely working on a memoir about growing up on a ranch in Colorado and really about what we've been talking about coming into a better understanding of kind of rediscovering my child, the child inside me, the child who could play and love the river and talk to all the birds. And then I grew away from that, and now I'm coming back to that, and I'd like to write it in memoir instead of fiction.
I can see why. And whatever comes out next, will you come back and be our guest and share it and talk about it?
I sure would love that.
Okay. Laura Pritchett, thank you so much for being on the Whimsy Farm podcast.
Thank you for having me. What a joy.
You've been listening to a conversation I had late last fall with my friend, award winning writer Laura Pritchett. Laura is the author of 7 novels, most recently, Playing with Wildfire and 3 Keys. She's also written 2 works of nonfiction. She directs the Nature Writing MFA program at Western Colorado University. I don't yet know Laura's word for 2026, but mine came to me mid December. My word for 2026 is vitality. This podcast is produced on the sacred ancestral land of the Anishinaabe people. Thanks to the California band Castle House for writing and performing our music. The Whimsy Farm podcast airs the 1st and 15th of each month on our YouTube channel, Carolyn Crane and Whimsy Farm, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Thanks to our underwriter, Just Play Productions, and to our paid Patreon members for their support of today's podcast. If you'd like to offer your support, please visit my website, whimsyfarm.net, and click the Patreon link to find a level of support that's right for you. There is also a free membership level. You can email me through the website as well as access all links to past and current episodes. That's whimsyfarm.net. Be sure to tune in on January 15th when I welcome Keith Runyon, General Secretary of Quaker Earth Care Witness. Keith and I will talk about QEW, faith-based environmental activism, and his trip last fall to the COP30 in Brazil. Until then, remember the words of Utah Phillips, who said, "Too many good people are doing too many good things to afford me the luxury of being pessimistic." Get out there and create some positive change. Stay safe, everyone.
whimsyfarms.net